in on word stress. And just to get us go quickly over, we're doing a series of 3 pronunciation webinar series. So back in November, we did one on voice quality settings. So this is our second one on word stress. And then in May, we'll do our third one, which is going to be on intonation. And all of the webinars are going up on, and I'll show you where at the end there, they will all be up on the YouTube channel with the Minnesota ABE Professional Development through Atlas. So you can go back and watch them at any time if anybody needs to duck out early or if people are coming in a little bit late. So just to quickly go over our objectives for our webinar today. We'd like to help people connect with other adult ESL teachers who are interested in teaching pronunciation, establish some guiding principles for pronunciation instruction, understand what word stress is and how it impacts pronunciation, and develop a
Andrea,
plan.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Did you mean to proceed with the slide? Because we're still seeing the title slide.
Oh, I have been proceeding with the slides.
Yeah. Let's make sure that you are sharing your screen.
Oh, thank
there
you.
It is. Mm-hmm, got it. Go.
Okay, are we on objectives?
You are. Go for it.
Thank you, Patsy. All right, so we want to establish guiding principles for pronunciation instruction, understand what word stress is and how it impacts pronunciation, and then develop a plan for integrating word stress instruction into classroom instruction. All right. So to start out with why are we here? What are some of the background principles, some of the research for why we should be doing pronunciation instruction with adult ESL learners? So Yates says that pronunciation should not be seen as fixing problems, but rather as teaching how to speak. So that we shouldn't be approaching pronunciation as looking at issues that learners have with the way they speak, but should be integrated from the very beginning whenever we're introducing new phrases, new words. Pronunciation should just be a natural part and a part of our everyday teaching. Thinking about with beginning level learners, the research tells us it makes little sense to immerse beginning level learners into the grammar and vocabulary of English, but then leave them to struggle on their own with the pronunciation. So in the past, there have been proponents of not teaching pronunciation and saying that people are going to pick it up naturally as they go. But what research has shown us is that that isn't actually what happens, particularly if there are pronunciation patterns that are different from somebody's native language or native languages. It's unlikely that somebody is going to be able to pick up those pronunciation patterns without direct explicit instruction. And so again, just saying that it's really important that pronunciation is something that we integrate into our everyday instruction and actually do explicit teaching on, instead of assuming that it's something that learners are going to pick up on their own. Because oftentimes we can't hear things that our brains haven't been taught to hear in our first language. Also, pronunciation difficulties can lead to a loss of confidence to interact in spoken English, which can affect further language development. This lack of progress in the second language acquisition can ultimately contribute to social isolation and limit educational and work opportunities. And this is something that I experienced firsthand, and I have talked about this a lot, where I had a student, probably my 4th or 5th year of teaching in a beginning level class, who told me one day, teacher, only you can understand us. And she was talking about the fact that I have a teacher ear and I was used to hearing accents. I was used to talking with people who didn't have a full mastery of English, and my brain was kind of filling in the gaps and I could easily understand what they said. But what was happening was when learners would go outside the classroom and they would try to talk to people out in the community, they were struggling to be understood and they were having negative experiences because people weren't able to understand their pronunciation. So that idea that when we're teaching new language, we need to make sure that we're helping people develop the intelligibility that they need to be able to be understood when they use the language outside the classroom. Not that it's good enough for a teacher or somebody who has a lot of experience with talking to people from different language backgrounds, but it's going to be understood by somebody who is the everyday person on the street or a manager at a job. So I want to begin with going through some guiding principles for pronunciation instruction, and we'll go back and we will revisit these at the end of the webinar as well to see if how we've touched on them during the content with word stress. So the first one is to take a systematic approach to pronunciation, allow students to advance through each developmental stage before moving on to the next. And this doesn't mean that we're going to teach this sound before we teach this sound, or that we're going to teach this type of pronunciation feature before we teach this type of pronunciation feature. What this means is the same way that we would teach, anything with vocabulary, grammar, any sort of new activity, is that first people need to build their perception of it. So people need to understand what the feature is, the pronunciation feature is, how it functions in the language, be able to actually hear it and identify it. Then we're going to move on to controlled practice, moving into less controlled practice, and finally moving into kind of the more natural free use. So the same way we would, again, when we're introducing any sort of grammar point, we're going to use that same process with teaching pronunciation. We want pronunciation to be embedded within the curriculum, just a part of the everyday lessons that we teach, not as a standalone activity. Whenever we're introducing vocabulary words, like we're going to be talking about word stress today, the word stress of the new vocabulary should be just a natural part of the teaching that. If we're doing dialogues, we can easily integrate intonation, but we want it to be embedded in the curriculum as opposed to something separate and special. We need to teach pronunciation explicitly. So that idea that it's not necessarily true, and obviously there will be some exceptions to this, people who can hear a language and can pick up on the pronunciation features and the patterns, but for the most part, it's really important that people are explicitly taught it, that we explicitly talk about it and practice the pronunciation, producing the pronunciation features together. We don't want to wait to start teaching pronunciation. We want to teach it from the very beginning levels. So right when we are starting out, not waiting until somebody's high beginning or intermediate to start working on pronunciation. It should be incorporated at the very beginning. And as you'll see today, we're going to be watching some videos, and the videos are taking place, or word stress videos are taking place in beginning level classrooms. And we'll have some time to unpack this a little bit. The activities can be used in any level, just with the adapting the content, adapting the words that you would use to a higher level. So we want to prioritize pronunciation needs and focus on features that will have the greatest impact on intelligibility. So not spending all of our time with pronunciation on things that aren't going to really make a difference. So the example I always use is the TH sound. I spent a lot of time teaching my students how to make the TH sound, only to find that it actually doesn't really impact people's ability to understand someone if they're not pronouncing the TH sound correctly. So we want to be spending time on things that are going to make the greatest difference. And a lot of times what that is going to mean are things called suprasegmentals. The things above and beyond the language that help give it the sounds. So what we're going to be talking about word stress today, this is something that has a huge impact on intelligibility, people's ability to be understood. And then finally, the last principle is focus on intelligibility, not accent reduction. There is absolutely nothing wrong with having an accent. We do not want to make people feel like they need to get rid of their accents or need to speak like a native English speaker. What we're trying to do is give people the tools that they need, that they can choose whether or not they want to use, and so that they can hopefully be more easily understood as they go about their lives outside of the classroom. All right, so we're going to shift away from those principles, and we are going to focus in on our topic today, which is word stress. So first off, just a quick overview of what is word stress. So with words with 2 or more syllables, and this is in English, one syllable will receive more importance than the others. This syllable receives the primary word stress. And today we're going to be focusing on primary word stress and not worry about secondary word stress or tertiary word stress. The primary word stress is the one that's the most important, so it's really the one that you should be focusing on first and foremost. So when we talk about primary word stress, what that means is that compared to the other syllables, the vowel of that syllable is going to be slightly louder, it's going to be longer, and it's going to be at a higher pitch. And it might most likely will be all 3, but depending on the speaker, it might not necessarily be all 3 at the same time. But in general, the vowel of that syllable will be louder, longer, and at a higher pitch, which means it stands out from the other syllables. So let's look at some examples of that. The word computer. You can hear how that pew is a little bit louder, longer, and at a slightly higher pitch. That vowel is really stretched out. Government, environment, participation, behavior, resume. So why do we want to spend time on word stress? Why is it important? I mean, it's a pretty small and can seem like a fairly minor thing. Well, one of the things that we know about it is that it's really a convenient focal point for pronunciation instruction. It's been claimed to be an area of maximum overlap for communicative importance and teachability, in that word stress is this beautiful shining thing in pronunciation where it's really relatively easy to teach, and it actually makes a huge difference in people's ability to listen to and understand the speaker's message. And this is for one reason in particular, and that's that English speakers tend to store words according to stress patterns. So if the stress pattern is wrong, the listener is going to search for stored words in the wrong category. So if, let's see, syllable, syllable. If I pronounce a word wrong and I say the emphasis is on the wrong syllable, I'm saying all of the sounds right, but I'm shifting up that stress pattern. And so the listener's brain is going to automatically look for that word first by stress pattern. And so they might substitute a word with a different stress pattern. And research has shown that lexical stress identity often overrides segmental information and can cause false word recognition. And I'll show some examples of this in a minute. But I do want to quickly talk about just how the brain stores words. So if someone's first language is English, so thinking about the people that learners or students are going to be talking to outside of the classroom, the brain is going to store words on a lot of different levels. There's a physical level, so example, the word dog is going to be stored with words that rhyme with it, like dog and log or dog and dig. With semantic association, so synonyms and related words, the word dog is going to be stored with words that remind us of it, like bone and puppy, leash. We store words by word class, nouns, verbs, and adjectives. We store words by emotion and sensory perceptions. So for example, if you were bitten by a dog as a child, the word dog might be stored with words like fear and stitches and pain. Or if as a child you had a dog that was really smelly, it might be stored, the word dog might be stored with words like smell or stink or dirty. And here's what matters to us, is the brain also stores words by word stress pattern. And that word stress pattern tends to be, for people who are native English speakers, the first place their brain will look. And then they'll think about the sound semantic association. So why is word stress important? It really makes it easier for the listener to understand the message. Our brains, if we are, sorry, I'm still talking about we, but somebody who is a native English speaker, their brain is trained to listen for word stress patterns. So a way that someone who's learning English can make it much easier on the listener is to use the correct word stress pattern. And when the word stress pattern is off, they've done some research and found that often people will hear a completely different word. So for example, they did a study where they had someone who is a non-native speaker of English said the word suitable. They meant to say the word suitable, but they pronounced it suitable, and the listener heard the level. Or they meant to say the word written, and they pronounced it written, and the listener heard retain. Or my favorite, the intended word was normally, and it was pronounced normally, and the listener heard no money. So you can see that that word stress pattern is really, really important and can actually override the sounds, including the vowel sounds, in what the person hears, the listener hears. So then the question is, how do we teach word stress to English learners? What are we going to do in the classroom to help them understand what word stress is and how to use it? So thinking back to when we were talking about those principles, that the first principle was that we have to go through all of the steps. So we have to start with perception. And with word stress, we really have to start with the syllables. In order to produce word stress accurately, learners first have to understand that words in English have syllables, and that words with 2 or more syllables have one that is stronger. That's the very first place that we need to start. And we can do this in a number of ways. We can have students tap out syllables when we are working on new vocabulary, clap the syllables, or do finger counting with the syllables. So I'm going to go ahead and launch our video, because instead of having you listen to me talk about how to teach word stress for an hour and a half, we have some videos that you can watch from the online Minnesota ABE training videos on YouTube. So I'm going to let this buffer for just 1 second.
So I'm just going to chime in. I am seeing the video and I heard it like a couple of notes of music. And if people did not have that experience a second ago, hopefully, I actually, what opens up for me is right, she's buffering it now. So you may have to move, like another tab opens, you might have to move the screen that Andrea is sharing with the PowerPoint to reveal a screen with the video. So you might have to do a little troubleshooting on your end, and it's going to show up differently on different people's machines. So you should see a video at the top. It says word stress, adult ESL pronunciation activities. It's paused.
Yep, that is a terrible expression I have on my face where it's paused right now, but.
Does anyone, can I get a couple confirmations from the audience that you can move your PowerPoint screen in order to see the video screen? All right, I'm not seeing anyone in the chat. If someone can please communicate with us that you are able to move the PowerPoint screen and see a paused video screen, please.
Patsy, should I go ahead and just play a couple seconds of it to see if...
Why don't you play a couple seconds. Sheila says she can see it. Okay, now Christine sees it. Christine, if you could chat in your Yeah, the pause screen came up automatically. It should. If you go back to your chat box, you might have to go back to the other screen. However, just be aware, you might have to do a little clicking to get it to what you need. Why don't you go ahead and play a couple of seconds just so people find it.
Oh, I went back to. All right, can everybody see and hear that? Can I go ahead and keep playing?
Yeah. So Christine had to minimize the go to training window and locate the tab, right? So you might have to navigate to a different tab. It looks like people are able to see and hear it. I was
Okay.
on my end as well. So I think go ahead, and if people are having any issues, I am here. So yeah, Lori, thank you for letting us know. You had to minimize one screen in order to get to the other one, but it did work. Go team. All right, go Andrea. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, so again, this is that first step of helping learners be able to know what syllables are and be able to count them out. So we're just going to watch about 2 minutes of this right now. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pause the video right now. And I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint slides. So I'm back on, make sure I'm sharing my screen. So I'm sharing my screen. So I'm back on the PowerPoint slides. Can people see the PowerPoint slides?
I can see them. So people may need to re-navigate to, like you might have to move that tab out of the way to get back to your
And
PowerPoint slide.
if I need to, I can go back and close the video again, and then open it after I talk a little bit more.
Okay. So you should see a lady in a pink shirt right now on the PowerPoint. And if not, you may need to minimize the previous screen and click back. You might have to click your dashboard. For me, if you just click on that little orange arrow, it comes up right away. I'll click to the tab where the PowerPoint is showing. Yeah, and do try closing the video, Andrea. Did you already?
Oh, I will go ahead and do that.
Yeah, you should be able to navigate between the tabs, but it looks like a couple people are having trouble. So
okay,
let's just go ahead and close it.
Yeah, let me go ahead.
All right. Can the people who weren't able to see it tell us, can you see the PowerPoint with lady in the pink shirt? Yep, okay, we're good. Go right ahead. Sorry for the interruption.
Oh, not a problem at all. All right, so we're all seeing the lady in the pink shirt. Okay, so we just watched an example of what the listen and counting syllables, and the learners in the video were doing tapping, and either on the table or on their hand to get some kinesthetic feedback. And one of the things for this video, I went into a class and did a little lesson on pronunciation to be able to make a video out of it. But what I did is I had talked to the teacher ahead of time, and we were using the words that she was already using in the class. So this is that idea of we want to embed pronunciation instruction into the curriculum. I didn't come in with I'm going to teach pronunciation and here's these new words that have specific word stress patterns. The idea is that we want to take the words, take the vocabulary learners are already using, no matter what level they're at, and then use that for what we're going to do instruction on pronunciation, instead of coming up with words that learners won't necessarily need to use. So that first thing we need to do is make sure that people are able to know what syllables are and that they can identify and count out the syllables, because before you can stress a syllable, you have to be able to hear the individual syllables themselves. Then the next thing that needs to happen is people need to be able to identify the stressed syllable. And so hearing that there are 2 or more syllables, identifying which one is actually going to be stronger. Then the next step is doing controlled practice, producing the stressed syllable. So controlled practice, and this is that idea where before we have learners going and doing communicative activities, first we're doing the very highly controlled practice where they're getting lots of immediate feedback from the teacher or from each other. So I'd like to show a little bit more of the video, but I think because we're having some issues switching back and forth, I'm going to move forward. I'm going to do a little bit more talking with my PowerPoint, and then I'm going to have us watch several sections of the video, and then we'll come back and review it together. So we're going to watch some different examples of perception and controlled practiced activities that can be used in the class in the video, but some additional activities that can be used are something called hum the word stress. So particularly people who are starting out with learning about syllables and what is word stress, sometimes it's really hard to hear which syllable is stressed. And it can be a lot easier to hear that when we take the sounds of the words out and we just use sounds. So for example, one of the words that we'll see in the video is the word provider. And it might be difficult for someone who's first learning about word stress to hear which syllable is stressed if we say provider. But if we take the sounds of the word out and say, all of a sudden it can be much easier for people to hear. So this is something that we can do as a controlled practice, and then it can also help with perception for people who are struggling to hear, is actually just removing kind of all of the sounds of the word and just humming the word. It's great for people to be able to hear. It can also be really helpful for learners to do themselves to get more familiar with the pattern. There are some fun games you can play too, where you can have a variety of different words with word stress, where you have students and partners. One person has a list, is looking at the list of words, and the other person hums a pattern. Their listening partner has to identify which word they heard. Another activity we can do is an activity, same or different word stress. So this is where you would say 2 different words. For example, provider, banana. Do those words have the same word stress or different word stress? Or if I said provider, watermelon, same or different? So this is building up that perception. This is something that the teacher can lead, or learners can be doing in partners or small groups as well. For controlled practice activities, building some kinesthetic movement into it, doing stand up and sit down. So having learners stand up, so physically stand up for the stress part of the word, and sit down for the on-stress syllables in the word. Conduct the word stress. So this is just what it sounds like, and we'll see some examples of what this looks like in the video. And in the next video we're going to watch is moving your hand up and down to indicate which syllables are stressed and which ones are unstressed. I've had a lot of fun with Play-Doh. So doing Play-Doh models of different words, vocabulary words, and having learners make a Play-Doh model of the word with the syllables, and emphasizing making, like for example, making small balls for each of the syllables and then making the stressed syllable larger. Or marking stressed syllables in dialogues. And this is something that all levels can do, but is particularly helpful for higher levels who might be doing dialogues, doing read alouds, doing a presentation, actually going through and for the words that are important that have multi-syllables, going in and bubbling or just marking the syllable as stressed so that they know which syllable that they should be stressing. All right, so I'm going to go back to the video and we're going to watch some examples of identifying the stressed syllables and doing some controlled practice producing the stressed syllable. So we're going to watch several chunks of the video this time. All right.
So just a heads up, it should pop up automatically. Mine is popping up and saying waiting for the organizer to start the video. Hopefully other people are seeing that same screen. Andrea, that did pop up automatically. And now I see a gentleman with a beard and mustache, an older gentleman in front of him. It looks like it's waiting for you to play. If people are not seeing that, let me know. And if you click on your dashboard, it might take you back to the PowerPoint and you'll have to navigate back to that video tab. So there might be a little clicking, but can I get some confirmation that people are seeing what appears to be the beginning of a video that is not yet playing? Yep, good. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Mechanic childcare, yes. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead to the part that I'd like us to watch. So we might need another second of buffering. Okay, so again, this is going to be showing some different activities for helping learners build up the perception now of, we've gone through what are syllables and counting out different syllables. So now moving into how we can stress different syllables are stressed in words, and how we can build some perception of that, and then that controlled practice of actually producing it in a controlled manner with the class. All right, so I'm pausing it and I'm going to skip us ahead. And the next activity is we're going to see the learners doing is they are going to be using rubber bands to emphasize the stressed syllable. So remember we said that the stressed syllable is louder, longer, and higher in pitch. So these rubber bands are just a great way to get people to kind of drag out and lengthen that stressed syllable. And what I've heard and what I've read is that if you're going to work on one thing with helping learners be able to produce word stress, helping people who are not native English speakers to produce word stress, lengthening the vowel in the stress syllable is the most important thing. It's more important than making it louder, and it's more important than shifting your pitch, is pulling out that vowel. So rubber bands are just a great kinesthetic way to practice pulling out the vowel in the stressed syllable, lengthening it so that it really pops out of the word. So I'm going to move us ahead. And we're just going to watch a little bit of the learners doing the rubber bands. All right, so I'm going to play the video again. All right, so I'm pausing the video again, and I'm just going to talk quickly about what we're going to see next. And then also, so again, I love the rubber bands because it helps stretch out the syllable stretch out the vowel in the stressed syllable. Another thing, kind of an extra bonus for doing word stress work and counting syllables is if anybody works with learners who like to add an extra syllable onto the end of the word. So for example, if you have students, I hear this a lot with people with Somali students who they will add an extra like E sound, an extra vowel sound onto the end. So rest becomes like rusty. So counting the syllables and doing these activities with tapping them out or using rubber bands can help emphasize that a word is only one syllable or only two syllables and that they shouldn't be adding an extra syllable. So it's also a little bonus activity that you can get. All right, so we're going to look at one more activity, and this is an activity, another kinesthetic hands-on and visual activity with using little markers to count out the syllables in the word, and then moving the markers up to indicate which of the syllables in the word is stressed. So again, I'm going to start playing this and we'll watch for just a couple of minutes. All right, so I have stopped the video again, and I'm going to go ahead and end it at this point and go back to my PowerPoint. So can everybody see the PowerPoint? We're back looking at the woman in the pink shirt. Oh, let me make sure I'm sharing my screen again. Oh, there
So
we go.
I do see it, Andrea, and people might have to navigate to that tab, but you should still be able to navigate back to Andrea's PowerPoint with, yep, we got confirmation. Go right ahead.
All right, great. So we looked in the video about listening, tapping, and finger counting, identifying the stressed syllable, controlled practice producing the stressed syllable. And then the last thing, or the next thing that we want to have people be able to do is group words by word stress pattern. So this is kind of exactly what people who are native English speakers do in their brain is they are able to group words. Their brains are automatically grouping words by word stress patterns. This is something that is really helpful to do in classes is have students actually do those activities to group the words by word stress patterns. So we're going to go back. We're going to watch a little bit more of this video. So there's lots of shifting back and forth. But again, when we're talking about teaching, it's so much more helpful to be able to actually see it in action instead of just listening to somebody talk about what teaching should look like. But there's one more thing I want to talk about before we go back to that video. And unfortunately, I didn't have time in the video to be able to show doing this. But the last step, what we always want to do with that idea of keeping things embedded in the curriculum is then go and put the words back into context. So if you are teaching a lesson and you are working on new vocabulary, do one or two activities with word stress. Anytime you are introducing new vocabulary words, teaching the word stress patterns and making sure that people can understand and produce them should just be a part of teaching the vocabulary because it's a huge part of being able to produce the words in a way that native English speakers are going to be able to understand. But we want to make sure that after we do those kind of isolated control practices, that we're then going and doing some practice conversations, doing some dialogues, and I'll show some different things that we can do for putting words back into context, that how we can expand that pronunciation practice through doing the dialogues, doing role plays, doing sentence frames for lower level learners, question and answer activities, having higher level learners do presentations where they're using the vocabulary that they learned with the word stress patterns and then putting it back into communicative speech the way that they would be using it outside of the classroom. But again, it's just very important that we are giving learners the chance to practice the controlled practice and then moving it back into communicative practice. So sorry I keep emphasizing this, but that idea that we want to be using the language that learners are already learning in their classes, the language that they're going to need to use outside of the classroom. So we're going to play the last part of this video. And then I think I'm just going to try to, instead of switching back and forth, what I'm going to have us do is just watch a video for how we can put it all together. We're going to watch about a 12-minute video of a teacher who's doing a word stress routine that she does every week with her class using a dialogue. And so we'll watch how she does the activity and then we'll come back. We'll use a chat box to kind of unpack a little bit about what we see. All right, so this should be the last time. We're gonna go back to the activities.
And the best time, this time it's going to be so easy. So thank you, Andrea, for your patience through all this. And everyone, it seems like we've got the hang of it here. We knew we just had to try it and good things would happen. So All
Good
right, for
thing we
me,
practice ahead
it
of time.
popped up. It says waiting for organizer to start the video. Looks like
Okay,
a
I
little
just paid a
buffering
couple
happening.
seconds of it, so it would start buffering.
Okay.
All right, and then I'm gonna skip ahead to where I'd like this to be.
I did see a
All right,
couple of hands up in the chat, and I've chatted to you directly, so I'm assuming they're tech issues, but if not, please chat to me directly and I'll be able to field your question. All right, Andrea, you ready?
yeah, I'm gonna go
Okay,
ahead
let's try
and
it.
play.
Doesn't look like it's playing yet. Go ahead and try that again.
It's playing on my end. Is anybody else?
It doesn't appear to be playing. Do you want to stop it and try it and just
Jean?
play again?
Okay, it looks like it was playing for other people. All
Oh, okay,
right,
maybe
I'll
it was
just go
me.
ahead
Sorry,
and
friends.
start again.
Yeah, my bad.
All right. Yep, it should be playing now. All right, so I went ahead, I stopped this video, and I'm about to play another one, but I just want to quickly show. So the learners did the word stress grid where they worked independently or with a partner, and they grouped all of those words by word stress pattern. Now we're going through and checking their work, and so they're coming up and writing the word stress pattern. They're bubbling the word stress. And this bubbling the word stress is something that you can do with any level, not just lower levels. It's a really nice visual for people to be able to see how many syllables and which syllable is stressed. And it can be great for learners who are higher level if they're reading a speech or doing a reading out loud to go through and bubble the kind of those important multi-syllable words because it's such a quick, easy visual that they can, as they're reading, glance at it and know how to stress which syllable is stressed while they're reading out loud. All right, so I'm going to switch away from this word stress, and we're going to watch a different video. So I just started it, and then I'm going to go ahead and skip over the introduction. This is the video we're going to watch. We're going to watch about 12 minutes of it. And this is a beginning level class doing a word stress routine with a dialogue that they did previously. And as you're watching it, I want you to be thinking about how does she shift from the controlled, very controlled activity, the building perception to controlled, to the less controlled and communicative activity. What is sort of supports and scaffolding is the teacher building in to help the learners with the word stress during this activity? And then how does she move it back into kind of the big picture, back into the communicative? So we're going to watch this video and then we'll go to the chat box and just let people type up any observations or thoughts that they have, or in particular, any ideas for how they could use activities and adapt it to a different level or a different topic. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to be starting the video now. All right, I have ended that, and I'm going to pull my screen back together. All right, so we should be back on the PowerPoint. Stopped the video. Can I just get a few confirmations that people are back on the PowerPoint and seeing the slide? Okay, great. So now if we could all take a look at the chat box. I would really like to hear from some people. So anything from the video that really stuck out to you, or anything that you could use from the video, activities that you could use from the video with your own learners, maybe adapting it for level. If people could just type in their responses, that would be great in that chat box, and I'll read them out loud as you type them. Right, and I'll keep talking as people think about what they would like to type. So at the beginning, you could see that Maya started with the dialogue that the learners had done previously, and they were working on dates, they were working on days, and they were working on talking about whether or not that they were going to come to school, and being able to politely confirm or let somebody know. Great. And then so she moved from that. And see Barbara, I plan to use a bubble for my intermediate class when we go over vocabulary from a reading text. Excellent. Yeah, so that would be an example of that controlled practice. Yep. Naomi, I also really like the bubbles. It's just a really nice visual kinesthetic way. And we could see this is a literacy level class. So really nice and concrete for those lower literacy learners, but also really, really helpful for higher learners up into advanced. Add to vocabulary review in the low beginning class, introducing multi-syllable, academic words, yes, so really helpful. Those academic words and the great thing, I'm going to tell you, the higher you get and the more you get into academic words, the easier it is to start picking out patterns. Yep, great. So the long vowels, clapping, stomping, people are going to try rubber bands. Excellent. That can really make a difference. And the great thing about working with adults is you don't really have to worry about them, shooting each other with the rubber bands the way that you might have to worry about with high school or middle school students. Curious, anybody else have any thoughts on things that they would use from the videos that we've seen so far? Okay, yeah. Yep. So I see teaching advanced is hard to think of going this slowly, but that it's always important to incorporate word stress when teaching vocab, underlining the stress syllable or marking a line above that syllable. Excellent. Yeah. So with any level, this is something that's really important. And you can do some interesting activities with higher level students. Just again, building the perception of, I'm saying our new vocabulary words. How many syllables do you hear? Which one is stressed? It doesn't have to be, we watched a 12-minute video. It doesn't have to be that long. You can do it fairly quickly. Students helping to write on the board. It's always great to get students out of their seats. Partner suggestions, especially the humming. Yeah, and with pronunciation, I mean, I think with anything, but pronunciation in particular, when you can have learners working in partners, and so they get that immediate feedback about whether or not their partner heard them pronounce it the way that they were trying to pronounce it. it can be really hard sometimes to hear ourselves. Um, and to, we tend to hear ourselves the way that we want to hear ourselves. So doing partner work can be really helpful for learners to be able to get a better sense of how they are being heard and how the listener is actually hearing them and perceiving them. Because sometimes we don't necessarily hear ourselves. We think we're doing something, we think we're producing something, and the listener actually can't hear it. So partner activities for pronunciation are really, really helpful. Ooh, and then we have Chitka, my own first language has word stress in every word on the first syllable, always. Uh, if only English was as was straightforward and had straightforward pronunciation, it would make everything so much easier. All right, I'm going to go ahead and keep us moving forward, but people, please feel free to continue to share, and we'll have a little bit more time if people would like to share some other ideas too. So we talked about, before we watched the video, ways that we can expand that pronunciation practice, and you saw in the video how even with a very beginning level class, she was using language that they already knew and had already practiced, and it was just incorporated into her regular curriculum. They used it with a dialogue, and you could see when they were practicing, they weren't necessarily reading the dialogue word for word, but they were starting to use the language and make it their own. Oh, and one thing I didn't talk about before, when it comes to pronunciation, and I will tell you, I've been teaching for 16 years, and technology has come such a long way in just the past 16 years. Um, Videos can be a great way to help people be able to hear themselves. So having students working in partners, doing small groups, and actually videoing themselves talking, or listening to themselves talking, and then going, or just recording and not videoing, but just recording themselves and then going back and listening, and they can listen and hear whether or not they are doing the word stress accurately. So we've already started sharing some ideas about how we can integrate word stress practice into daily and weekly routines. A lot of people were talking about using the bubbles, using the rubber bands. Anything else that we've talked about, or those ideas that anybody would like to share that they're going to start using in their regular classes? If anybody else wants to tap in or type up in the chat box. All right, well, I'll go ahead and keep going. And if I see some things popping up, I can always pause and we can share those as well. But again, I would just really encourage people to be thinking about teaching word stress, any area of pronunciation, but word stress, to be thinking about it as just a regular part of teaching. Anytime you are introducing new vocabulary words, incorporating the word stress pattern, you can do it really quickly. It just takes a second to say, how many syllables? Which one is stressed? Or even show me the stress, and have learners do the conducting, just raising and lowering their hands. But just helping learners to understand that word stress is a huge part of English. And anytime that they are saying multi-syllable words, they should be thinking about where the word stress falls. And I know it can feel like, people are already worrying about so much stuff. There's always so many things to think about it. But really understanding that word stress is just a part of learning the vocabulary. And the more familiar people are, the more instinctual it's going to become. People who are native speakers generally never even think about word stress unless the word stress is mixed up, and then all of a sudden they become very, very aware of it. So as much as you can, just integrating the word stress practice into daily and weekly routines, just making it a regular part of your teaching. So quickly going back and revisiting those guiding principles that we talked about at the very beginning of our webinar, and which ones we have hit so far. So that taking a systematic approach to pronunciation, allowing students to advance through each developmental stage before moving on to the next. So when we're teaching word stress, making sure that they can hear and count the syllables and hear the word stress before we ask them to do the controlled practice, moving to less controlled to communicative practice. Just embedding the pronunciation within the curriculum. Anytime we're teaching vocabulary, we should definitely be teaching the word stress patterns. Teaching it explicitly, not expecting that learners are going to pick up on word stress patterns unless they have been taught that this is something important to listen for and produce. Word stress is that, again, just a beautiful thing that we can teach at any level, from very beginning, low literacy, up to advanced. When we're talking about prioritizing pronunciation needs and focusing on features that will have the greatest impact on intelligibility, word stress is definitely one of those. If you have any doubt, just try saying a word that's more than 2 syllables and put the emphasis on the wrong syllable, and you can hear what a big difference it makes. And then, as always, focusing on intelligibility, not accent reduction. Teaching learners what word stress is and how to use it. We aren't telling them they have to speak like a native speaker. We're telling them this is a tool that you can use. This is just a part of saying the language that's going to make it a lot easier for the listener, which is going to make it a lot more likely that the communication is going to be successful. All right, so we do have some additional resources. And Patsy, if you want to jump in for any of
Sure.
this.
Yeah, absolutely. So I assume everyone's been to our website. If you registered for this event, you have already navigated parts of it. You may not know we do have a new and improved and highly exciting ESL library that Andrea actually curates for us. So when you go to the website, you can click on resources and it'll take you to a section of the website that has a special ESL library. So we just want to be sure people know about that and go there frequently. You will also see libraries for all the other things listed here on the screen. So some of the newer ones, there's also one on project-based learning, there's CCRS standards, there's of course reading and ACEs and other things. So lots and lots of resources are listed there. They are curated by people who go through and make sure that what's there is really valuable, and who check those links and write up little blurbs on each of them. So it's not a clearinghouse. Think of it as a boutique. Good stuff only on the Atlas website. And then this webinar, like most of our webinars, we do archive. So they are recorded and then will be posted here in the YouTube channel. So you just can search on YouTube for Minnesota ABE Professional Development to find that channel. And if you click on playlists, you can navigate to a list just for ESL, for example, or you can just click on videos to see the last uploaded ones. And we'll post this one within the next day or so. And I'll also get CEUs out to everybody. So yeah, I'll take care of that.
And there is a pronunciation playlist that has
right. There's even a
the 2
specific
videos we watched and then 5 additional videos. Yep.
Excellent. Thank you. And many of them starring people on this very webinar, including Andrea. So lots of local talent making YouTube stardom. So great stuff to find. And then just a reminder, we're about to start our regional season. So if you live in the metro area and want to join us, we're at March 6th. Registration actually closes a week prior. So coming up here, so you want to get on that, you can go to the events calendar on the Atlas website and register for the metro regional. Will be in Roseville. The North regional is in Grand Rapids, end of the month. When the South regional will be in Mankato on April 17th. And these are events that are only for adult educators. So every session at these regionals are about adult basic education, a wide array of topics from adult career pathways to standards, reading, writing, social studies, all kinds of things available for you there.
All right, so this brings us to the end of the webinar. And so I we're going to be wrapping up, but I will stay online if people have any additional questions. I'd be super happy to answer them. Otherwise, feel free to send me an email at aechelberger@literacymn.org. And as Patsy said, this webinar is going to be archived. You can find the videos are available on that YouTube channel. And do definitely check out the Atlas ESL library. There's a page specific for pronunciation with lots of additional great resources.
Great. Special shout out to Andrea for doing this even among flu symptoms. So thank you so much for stepping up to continue with our plan for this webinar. I appreciate it. We'll get that archived soon and we'll get CEUs into your inbox, everyone who was able to attend. So thank you. We'll stick around, but I will stop the recording now.
Oh,
question about the PowerPoint. Great question. If you actually forward me a PDF of that, Andrea, I can send it out with the CEUs. How's that?
okay.
Yep.
I'll forward that to you and I'll also pop it in the